Welcome back, guys. In this video, we are going to start a new project. Let me give you a gist of what we are going to work on. We want a registration page. Okay. And currently we are only working on the servlets and JSPs part, so I will not be focusing a lot on the UI part. I mean, I will not be focusing a lot on the CSS and the bootstrap part. We will be mainly focusing on the HTML as well as the Java code. So in this registration page, we want very basic details, very simple details. You can also you can further extend it as you wish, but for now we will have very simple details like we need a first name, followed by that we need a last name, and then maybe we need an email address. Okay, and then maybe we need password, and then re-enter password. Okay, so let's just call it as okay, let us call it re-enter password. Okay, these are the details that we need. Okay, and so their respective boxes. For now, our form will not be as organized as I am drawing right now. All of that can be done very easily using CSS or Bootstrap. Register is a button, and we will also include one more button called reset. Okay, and this is a button, and this is a button. Okay, and so the overall form can be imagined somewhat like this. Okay, that is the idea. And what should happen when it is done? Okay, what we want to do is for this particular project, first of all, what we will do is because this is a registration page, this data need to be saved somewhere. Okay, and for this purpose we are going to use a database. Okay, so excuse me, imagine that there is a imagine that there is a table called UserDB. Okay, database is UserDB, and let us say there is a table called user. Okay, and for this user table we are going to have the same exact details. Okay, so we will have the table with a column with column names like we need user ID, we need user's full name, so let us call it full name. Okay, and why full name as a separate value? Because um, we particularly won't be needing those names separately anywhere. Or shall we save them separately? Okay, let us save them separately. That would be much useful. Okay, F name and L name. Okay, first name, last name, and then email. Okay, and password. Okay, let us imagine that these are the columns for our table called user. Okay, and this table we need. So another thing that we will be doing is creating this table in our database, and for the if you already know a little bit of JDBC connectivity and etc., that would be very much useful for this particular session. And so the idea is that after filling the details here, when user clicks on the register button, then this data has to be used to create this table. Okay, and before creating the table, there are few validations we have to do. One validation we have to do is whether all the data is filled or not. That means there should not be any empty details. Okay, another verification that we have to do is whether email address is in the right format or not. That can be very easily done with the help of HTML's email as a input type, that will be taken care by HTML. But the most important, another most important validation that you have to do is whether password and re-enter password values are equal or not. Okay, those are the few validations that we have to do before we will go ahead with the servlet behavior, where when after the validation is done, user has the okay sorry when the register button is clicked and when the validation is done, then that data has to be saved here by creating a user ID for each user. Okay, so because user ID has to be generated, because user ID is not part of the registration page, this is going to be auto generated, and you already know how to get it with in database, right? There is auto increment feature, and that feature we will be using to auto generate the IDs, and first name last name will come here, email will come here, and password will be storing only once. Anyway, we just want to confirm from the registration in the registration. That is why we are using a re-enter password. So here we will be storing it only once. Okay, that is the broad idea. So when user clicks on the register, this data has to be updated in the database. That is the idea. Okay, so for this, what we are going to start with, we will start with our HTML page. So we'll call this page as register.html. For now, we will be building a servlet code, and then we will be changing it into a JSP type of a code. Okay, so this is register.html, and this database names I already have given. So the idea is when when register button is clicked, the data has to go to intermediate servlet. Data has to go to an intermediate servlet, and let us call this servlet as register servlet. Okay, and in this register servlet, what are the steps that we are going to do is mainly focusing on validation. Validation will be our first step, so let me write it. First step is validation, and second step, let us call it input validation. In the sense, whatever values that are entered by the user, we will be validating whether it is correct or not, whether it is filled or not. So simpler way I can say, for input validation, we will be checking for empty strings, we will be checking for password match. Okay, mainly these are the main things that we will be checking. Then the second thing that we have to do is save the data, get the data and save. Then the third step is store that data in database. Okay, these are the three steps that we are going to do in the register servlet. So you can imagine the steps going from here to from register button to register servlet, this you can imagine as the first step. Okay, and then from here it will be going to the database, so it will be storing the data in the database. Okay, so you can imagine that particular order. So this you can imagine as first step, and then this you can imagine as the second step. And in the first step, these are the three things that will be done internally, and as the third step of the internal register servlet, it will go to the database and update the data. Okay, that is the idea that we are going to implement. Okay, so first step, we have to create our registration page. So I'm going to my, okay, let us do one thing. Let me create a separate project, okay, which includes this dynamic web project, and let's call this project as um, user management, MGMT management, user management project. Okay, and I'm choosing Apache Tomcat to 8.5, 3.1, and here custom, next, finish. Okay, and the structure and all we have already discussed earlier. I'm going to JavaScript resources, and now we are going to create our first HTML page. Okay, so here I'm writing, let us say once again, this is a registration page. Okay, and for this project, being it is user management, registration page can be considered as the first page. Okay, so let us make it index.html, and let's write form, and in the form I want the first as the heading. Okay, first one is the heading, and so inside the first, let us say h2. Okay, and that is registration form. Then I need labels, so I'm using label tag, and in label tag I will be using for attribute. Okay, for attribute is used to attach this label with the respective input field. Okay, so as per the diagram, the first one is first name, so I'm going to call it as first name, and for this I'm giving, let us say label is first name, and then I'm having an input tag. For the input tag I'm giving, so because I want this label to be attached with this input tag, this exact value I will be giving as the name attribute of this input tag. Okay, so type attribute with text, and name attribute with same value as the form value. Okay, something like this. Okay, then let me just copy this part. This will be last name, okay, and then let me copy once again. Next is email, so let us call this email, and let us call this email, and let us make it email. And because email has to be having its own verifications, validations, so I'm giving the type as email type. Copy, paste, and this is going to be my main password. Okay, because password, there are two fields. I'm going to call this password field as maybe first password, and this is repassword. Okay, so let us call it as first pass. Okay, and I'm saying, let us say copy paste. This type has to be password type. Okay, same goes here. And this is, let us say, sorry, this one, let us say repass. Okay, so that is our main fields, and after that we also want two buttons. So let me only copy input part. So for this I need a submit type. Okay, for the submit type, earlier in the last video we have seen type as submit and nothing else, and we have also observed that when we are using type equal to submit, the button is by default given the name as submit but that value depends on the browser. So in Chrome browser it might look like submit, but in Firefox browser that the same button might look like submit query. That So instead of having different names, what we can do is we can fix a fix a button name for all browsers, and that can be done with the help of value attribute. Let us say I'm giving the value as register. Okay, that is one button I want, and one more button I want is a reset type. And for this reset type I don't want to give any value because I want that to be reset. Okay, so this is my basic HTML page, and this has to be redirected to, as discussed, register servlet. Okay, so let me give the action value name as register servlet. Okay, and because here I have given the name as register servlet, the page that I'm going to create should have this as the name, this as the class name. But we also have discussed that this need not be the class name. Okay, we also have discussed that this need not be the class name. This has to be the name given to that resource which gets executed. It can be of any name as long as this name matches the URL mapping of that particular resource. In the sense, as we discussed in the last video, at the rate web servlet value, if that value matches with this value, that's totally fine. So I don't want to reveal this name called register servlet to anyone. For that purpose, I'm going to give the name as register, but the class name is going to be register servlet. Okay, so I'm going to give the name as register. Okay, and I'm going to create my servlet. Class name is register servlet, and it is located in com dot Vikas dot Vikas, let us say. Okay, register servlet is a class name. Next, but URL mapping, I want it to be something different. So you can just click this and click on the edit button, and you can change this URL mapping, which will be affected of at the rate web servlet kind of annotation. Let me show you. So I'm going to change this to register because this is the exact name I have given in my form tag action attribute as well. So /register, click OK, and then let me show you that. See, action attribute register, and this is a URL mapping, so /register, and then that's it. Next, and here what I'm going to do is, because this is a registration form and user is going to enter a sensitive information, especially like email and password, I don't want that to be revealed to the user. Okay, if you remember guys, in the last project we have seen that the data entered by the user is visible in the URL. I don't want that information to be visible in the URL, and that for that purpose what we are going to use is we are going to make use of this doPost method. Okay, we'll discuss briefly what is doPost. I'm going to remove the constructors from class, click finish, and I want you to observe something. Register servlet.java is the class name, register servlet is the class name, but the URL mapping is register, the name that I have given for URL mapping. Okay, so that is the name, and the exact same name I have used in action attribute as well. And so when we click on submit button here, which is register button, then it will redirect to register resource, which is nothing but register servlet. Okay, so let me remove these comment lines. We don't need it. Remove the comment lines, remove the comment lines. Okay, so in this particular case, let us try to observe that as I mentioned, I want I don't want that whatever data that is entered by the user to be visible in the address bar. For that, for the form attribute, we have to give one more method, one more attribute called method. Okay, in this method attribute, all you have to do is give a value called post. Okay, when you give the method attribute value as post, by default all the values that are entered by user will not be shown in the address bar. So what is the difference between this option and the previous programs that we have tried? In the previous program that we have tried, we did not give method attribute at all. Okay, so let me write down what happens when you don't give method attribute at all. Okay, when no method attribute is written in form tag, then method is considered as get by default. Okay, so if you don't give any method attribute at all, it will be considered as get method, and because of that do get method gets called. But here we are giving method equal to post. Because we are choosing method to be post type, do post method will be called by default. So here also let me write do post of register servlet will be called. Okay, so that is the idea. Going to register servlet, you see do post method is created because we have included it at the time of creation. And I also want you to observe that in do post method we are actually calling do get method, supplying this request and response. So when the do post method is called and the request object is supplied to a do post method, that means request object is received by do post method, which actually contains the data from the fields of the form. And then internally when you are calling doGet with request, the same request will be supplied to doGet, and so doGet will be able to access the data that is supplied by the user. Okay, that is what we are going to do. We can provide the whole code in the doPost, that is your choice, or you can provide the code in the doGet and then just call doGet from doPost. That both works just fine. Okay, so let me remove the auto-generated code of doGet, and here we are going to do what the most important part, that is collect the data. The first step is collect the data, save that. Oh, I think I should change the order a bit. Okay, input validation has to be done after getting the data and saving the data, so let me change the order of these steps. Getting the data and saving the data plays the first role, and then input validation has to happen. Okay, okay, so the first step is to get the data. Let me write it down. Get the data and save the data. Get the data from user and save the data. Second step is to validate the data. Mainly we are going to check for empty strings, and password matching. Okay, and the third step we are going to do is save the data in the database. Okay, so these are the three steps we are going to. Okay, so let us get the data. What are the different things that we have to get? We have to get first name, last name, email, and password. Okay, password 2 times. So string first name is equal to request dot get parameter by supplying first name. Okay, so I just have to supply this name attribute value. Okay, so let me just copy paste for last name as well. This is last name, and the same name I'm choosing for the string variable name as well. Okay, and then email, then password. By the way, password I did not give the same name. This is first pass and this is repass. Sorry, this is first pass and this is repass. Okay, so accordingly we have to give the names. First pass, so first pass as, let us say, password 1, and this one is repass. Okay, re followed by capital P, re followed by capital P. Okay, repass, and here I'm saying repassword. Okay, so those are the names that we have collected the data and saved the data. The next step is to validate the data. Okay, so for validation purpose, we can write our code here itself, or else we can write a separate method which is doing the job. Okay, so I like to provide it as a separate method. What I will do is, for validation purposes, so okay, but again we have to supply everything as a parameter. Let us do it here itself. Okay, so if first name is equal to empty string, or last name is equal to empty string, or email is equal to empty string. Email anyway will be taken care by the HTML code itself. Email you need not verify. Password 1 is equal to empty string, or repassword is equal to empty string. Okay, if any of this is true, then you should not allow. So let me just write it as redirect to register page to try again. Okay, so that is what we want to do. Okay, else what we have to do, else we have to do the third step. Okay, something like this. Okay, so it is like if the validation is successful, in the sense if the empty strings are not entered by anyone, then only we have to allow that to be saved in the database. Okay,